Greatest Showman. You've probably either heard about this movie or most likely seen it. But do you really know who and what it's about? Well, today I'm here to tell you who and what it's about, what is true and not true in the movie, and who is true and not true in the movie. First of all, you probably do know that it's about P.T. Barnum and his circus from the mid to late 19th century. But do you really know who Barnum is? Barnum was born in 1910 in Bethel, Connecticut to an innkeeper, Philo Barnum. And although it implies in the movie that Barnum was an orphan at a fairly young age, this isn't entirely true. His father did die when Barnum was 15, but his mother was still living and he had a few siblings as well. So instead of him being homeless and stealing food from street vendors, he was the man of his house at age 15. At age 21, he married Charity Hallett, and although the movie only pictures 2 girls, in reality, Barnum and his wife had 4 girls. However, in early childhood, one of them died, and the second one was dismissed from the Barnum family for committing a crime. So you can see why they only chose to put the 2 in the movie. Around the time he was married, P.T. got into the lottery business. He lobbied for it to stay alive in the state of Connecticut, but when the lottery industry, his main source of income, was banned in his state, he sold his business and moved to New York City. And although Barnum is portrayed as a fun-loving guy who wanted to make odd people into stars, this isn't entirely true. In 1835, he bought a slave woman who claimed to have been 161 years old and George Washington's nurse. Now, although slave trading had already been outlawed in the state of New York, he found a loophole in the system, as there usually is one. He leased her for $1,000 for an entire year, and during the time he rented her, he put her to work 10 to 12 hours a day, and she eventually died before her lease was up. When Barnum had an autopsy performed on her, he actually made it public. That's right, you could have seen an autopsy performed on a stranger for 50 cents. Eventually, Barnum proved to the audience that this woman was actually around 80 and not 160. That, for obvious reasons, wasn't put into the movie, but they truthfully include the part where Barnum bought a big building in downtown New York City. He really did make it into his American Museum and have exotic stuffed animals and things of that sort, and he really did show off odd people. For example, little people, albinos, jugglers, and other people who had an odd quirk or an amazing talent. I bet you'd be happy to know that the character in the movie, Charles Stratton, really did exist, and he really did play General Tom Thumb. Although he wasn't in his 20s as pictured in the movie, he was actually only 4 years old when he became Tom Thumb. Barnum eventually gave up on his museum when it burned down twice by 1868. But before he gave up on his museum, he met Jenny Lind, the Swedish Nightingale. She is also a historical figure, and he really did take her on tour throughout the U.S. Their first performance at Castle Garden in New York City quadrupled Barnum's investment into the tour. But he commercialized and marketed the tour so much that Lind wanted out after 93 shows. She made over about $350,000, which was basically all given to charity, and he netted over $500,000. That in today's money is over $14 million. Now, you might be wondering if she really did kiss him on stage at the last performance. Well, in all of the places that I found information for my speech, never once did they mention a love relationship between the two of them. So whether they really did kiss on stage, I'm not really sure, but to be honest, I doubt they did. In the movie, Barnum is showed to start his circus fairly early in his ventures. However, in reality, he really didn't start his circus until he was 60. And after he changed the name of his circus constantly for about 11 years, he finally merged with James Bailey and created Barnum and Bailey's Greatest Show on Earth. This circus was the first to have 3 rings, and it traveled all around the world. When Barnum was 81, he came down with a terrible sickness. He knew he'd die, and he actually had his obituary written before he was dead, so he could enjoy it. Barnum died in his mansion in Bridgeport, Connecticut. So you can see that there are a lot of things that were either twisted in the movie or completely left out or made up. But the biggest thing that was fictionalized in the movie was Barnum's business partner, Philip Carlyle. He's a completely fictional character. And the acrobat that Carlisle eventually fell in love with wasn't completely fictional, as Barnum did have acrobats in his circus, but the love relationship between the two of them was completely made up and written into the movie. This might be disappointing to you, as it was to me, but you can't really blame the writers for wanting a romance part in their movie, as romance is usually a big part in movies. So, I hope you learned something new by watching my speech today, and if you haven't already, go watch The Greatest Showman.